I'm so excited to share this with you today because for me, as I was going through this journey with my daughter, and I know the same was for Lara, we found that lab testing sort of like was like a sort of beacon of like light throughout, sort of guiding us where to go next. And that's how I work with labs, how we work with labs when we work with the children in practice. And the good thing about the lab testing is that it's empowerment and education. So, in a mainstream environment, and this is something I'm really passionate about, is changing this narrative of, oh, this person has autism, or oh, this person has Down syndrome, or whatever other diagnosis that is clipped upon them. And then every single symptom that they have is as a result of that diagnosis. Well, that's absolute BS, as we know, because when we then delve down deeper into the lab work, we see that there's like this and this and this and this, and there's all these imbalances that are making up the symptoms of this diagnosis that our child has. And actually, at the end of that, what we realize is that the two things can be sort of separated apart. And so there is a medical side to that diagnosis. And this is what we like to uncover, because actually a lot of the symptoms that we call like autism, for an example, we can reverse or incredibly, profoundly and significantly improve when we address and balance the things that we find underneath the surface in this lab work. And so today I'm going to talk about a couple of labs, and the first one I'll go through is a Neurodevelopment Plus, because this is a lab test that we run routinely in practice, and it's really, really helpful for showing us kind of what is going on inside the brain from an antibody perspective. And I'll share my screen now so that I can give you some more information about this so you can see. I know you can't see on the podcast, but on the YouTube channel you'll be able to see this. If I can share my screen, because I'm not very technically able, so we'll see if that we'll see if that actually works out. Right, okay, so I think I've managed to share my screen. Okay, so this is a Neurodevelopment Plus that we did on a patient, and I'll give you a bit of a backstory. So this patient has autism, and they also have epilepsy, quite severe epilepsy, to the point where they're on a couple of types of medication to stop seizures from happening. And this child has a few words, but is pre-verbal really, they have some struggles in daily life where they can struggle to focus and struggle to calm down and get quite heightened to the point where it kind of impedes daily functioning. But this child is absolutely beautiful and vibrant and stunning and amazing. And when I say stunning, not on a aesthetic sense, I mean in their soul. They are like, every video I get of this child, it just lights up my life because she's so amazing. So anyway, so I'm going to go through sort of under that diagnosis, what is going on in her brain to cause some of those behaviors that we see. So when you look at this test, you'll see anti here. So anti basically means that there is an antibody that has been created towards this area of the brain, and this is tubulin. So tubulin is like a structural component of cell membranes, like neuronal membrane, which is obviously unhelpful if your immune system. So if we I'll just explain in simple terms what an antibody is. It's something that your immune system creates towards something that it perceives as a threat. So an illness that enters your body, or a bacteria or a virus that your body sees as a threat, it will create an antibody towards that to kill it off, like an immune response. So essentially what's happening, and what the Neurodevelopment Plus shows us, is the antibodies that your immune system is creating towards specific areas of the brain. And obviously from a neuroinflammation, from your child just being able to feel calm, regulated, learn, focus, sleep, do any of those things, if your immune system is continually attacking areas of their brain, that is obviously very unhelpful from a functionality perspective. So in this lab test, it shows us sort of an IgM. From an IgM perspective, that means that's an active infection or an active immune response going on. And an IgG means that is a past memory. So at some point in this child's life, something has triggered antibodies to be created towards this specific brain protein. And this is sort of what I'm going to show you as we go through. And then there are, just to give you a bit of insight on this, and we'll go through at the bottom, because this child has several viral and bacterial immune responses. what tends to happen is that the child will develop a virus or have a bacterial infection, and because the immune system's very overwhelmed and confused, it will cross-react with specific brain proteins. And I'll talk more about that as we go through, which ones that looks like. So like I say, this is an antibody towards this area of the brain, which is structural component of cell membranes. And of course, that's a myelination agent. So myelin is like if you imagine like a copper wire that is an electric conductor or electricity conductor, there's an insulating sheath around it, and that's what myelin does for your brain cells. So if you've got brain cells trying to connect and send signals towards each other for like speech or communication or just functionality, like our brain cells are sending like all these messages for functions, to get us to do things like I'm doing now, like with my hands and like speaking and all of that stuff. The myelin around that is the insulation for that. So you think if that's been broken down by the immune system or is being attacked by the immune system at some point, it's going to make the transmission of signaling between brain cells slower. And again, that's very unhelpful from a cognitive perspective in a child that may have cognitive delays or other behavioural things, which we'll cover as well. And then as we go through, you can see here, so which means there's an antibody against the immune system has mounted an attack against this RAGE peptide. So this is like blood-brain barrier. So in you've probably heard of like leaky gut. Well, that's a similar thing that happens in the brain. So there's like a mucosal layer that should be tight, and the junctions there should be tight so that only specific things can get through to the brain and like be absorbed. And when that's too leaky, it means that toxins and other unhelpful, they are harmful, byproducts can be allowed into the brain and cause toxicity there, which is obviously not helpful, again, for a child that is trying to function and trying to execute cognitive ability. That's not going to be helpful from that perspective.